Welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm now joined by Charlotte Dubin McCarthy, Business Development Manager at VU.City. Charlotte, you're very welcome.
Oh, thank you, Carol, for having me. I love your work and I love your show.
You're so good. Thank you. Charlotte, VU.City, most people will be familiar if they're in the industry, they will have been following some of the developments, and VU.City are definitely leading the charge. But you might just explain to people who aren't familiar with the company what you do.
Absolutely. So VUCITY was started about 4 years ago, and we have created digital twins for cities right across the UK, Ireland, and a couple of capital cities across the world. And we're using these 3D city models for design, planning, and development. So you can really get a sense of what how your scheme is going to be impacted and how you're going to impact others by using 3D models to drop your designs into to review. So that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. But we started off as a platform to review schemes in 3D, but actually realizing that there's so much more value in being able to layer on data and view that in 3D. So treating VUCITY as like a visualization tool for data is where there's a lot of value as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're hearing so much talk now about digital twins that we're just about coming to understand the value of these. But all of this, sometimes I think it gets lost in the conversation, particularly when we focus on the technology, that it's all about data. And I always think it's helpful to break down data. So talk to us about the data that we're looking at when we're looking at a VUCITY model.
Absolutely. So the data layers that we can layer on over the city are like environmental data, planning data, things that you can use to really assess what that development is, how that development is going to work in the landscape. So looking at things like flood risk, looking at data on listed buildings, looking at things like height restrictions in cities. So if you're designing a really tall building and you want to drop that into the model, layer on that protected views layer, and then you'll instantly be able to see whether that's going to be feasible or not, or whether that plan is going to be rejected. So the data is pretty much how we allow people to assess their designs.
Okay, this is going to be perhaps an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm always interested for providers who are looking across different geographic markets. I'm always interested to see how Dublin fares, and sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised and sometimes less so. In terms of digital adoption, where are you seeing, Ireland's built environment in terms of tech adoption? Where do you think we're sitting in relation to the marketplaces you're dealing with?
Well, I'm really glad that you've asked that, because Ireland is an area that I'm looking after. I'm looking after Dublin and Belfast, and I'm heavily researching both areas. And from an architecture point of view, from development and plantech and proptech and all the sort of digital tools, I think that Ireland is very far ahead in terms of innovation. And I'm delighted to see the sort of uptake and people really understanding VUCITY instantly when they see it. They get it. They're like, okay, you don't really have to explain it too much. And that's a good sign, I think.
Okay, that's really positive to hear, because sometimes when I ask that question, almost the opposite is true. And look, I think it's really important for us to be quite objective as to where we are in terms of tech adoption and, what we need to focus on and how the structures, whether it's through government policy or funding or actually industry adoption, or maybe on the academic side, where the gaps need to be filled. We started talking about data. So I suppose around the time of GDPR legislation being introduced, people started to focus heavily on data. And in a lot of ways, it was seen as almost a liability to have, whereas previously it was just an underused, almost offcut. It was something that was squandered. It wasn't leveraged at all. And then when GDPR legislation came in, suddenly it became quite an onerous thing to hold. And I think over the past 2 years, we're just seeing the move to understanding that it's a valuable asset. And I think in digital twins, it's much easier to see the data as an asset, because you're actually handing over not just one asset to a client, but you're also handing over a digital asset. So you're actually handing over two assets for that will serve for the lifetime of the building. Is there an understanding about that when you're speaking to potential clients?
Yes, I guess so. I mean, it's not something that we really go into too much, but I would say that from a sort of like data protection side of things is our users use VUCITY and their data is completely sort of private to them. So if they're working on designs and master plans, they can use the platform privately. So you can access with your own login and everything's completely protected. And a lot of the local authorities are using us for sort of shaping policy and reviewing planning applications in 3D. So in the UK, we've gotten over, well, actually 28 of the 33 London boroughs are using VUCITY on a daily basis to review schemes. And our goal is to get the local authorities in Dublin to hopefully start using VUCITY so that they can do the same, save a lot of time by scrutinizing plans and really assessing things on an evidence-based platform. But in terms of data, I'm really not sure I've just answered that very well.
No, look, it's all part of the conversation, but actually around reviewing plans, one of the things that I've been very vocal about over the last few years in this industry is that it's very difficult to expect members of the public to understand plans. I've been in this industry a decade and a half, and I genuinely struggle to read 2D plans.
Yeah.
It's not something. It's not a natural skill set I have. So actually, any type of 3D modeling brings a proposed development to life much the same way as immersive technologies. And you referenced there an empirical or a kind of a more data-driven approach to planning. I think that's really interesting. It's definitely where we need to go. I don't know of any country or jurisdiction that's doing that very well. Are you seeing any global leaders emerge in this space from a governmental point of view?
Not really. I think what we've created is very revolutionary. I don't think that anybody is offering what we're offering, which is good for us, and also for our users. So, I wouldn't say that I could really compare ourselves to any other platform like this. But in terms of the data, and I think what's really good is that if the councils and the local governments can put their data onto this platform and allow the architects and developers to quickly understand what the constraints are in locations, then it makes for faster, quicker designing and developing. And it just creates sort of transparency across the board with all of the various stakeholders.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So in terms of Dublin, where is VUCITY on the mapping journey for Dublin? How much is mapped at the moment?
So we've got 121 square kilometers covered. Everything is accurate to within 15 centimeters. So it's the most detailed model of Dublin to date. So the largest, most detailed model of London to date. And we've incorporated Dublin's largest ever tree study. So when you're dropping your models into review or you're creating a quick massing to review, you can turn those trees off or keep them on, or even just turn the leaves off if you want a winter view, a realistic winter view. And all of those trees are accurate to 15 centimeters. So there's over 580,000 trees. And the buildings in the model are actually all modeled up by hand. So we can guarantee the accuracy required for planning and design. So, yeah, I'm really bad at remembering what the questions were. Sorry.
No, actually, I didn't realize that you were as extensive as mapping all of the trees, because actually that's a really controversial one at the moment, because there's a proposed bus connects plan where we want to, where the city needs to build out public transport infrastructure and try decrease individual car dependency going in and around the city, and one of the plans to do that is this new bus connects. However, because Dublin is laid out the way it is, to do this will involve taking a little bit of the front garden of some houses and which is controversial in itself, but it also means removing a number of trees. And there's been a huge backlash against it. And, obviously there's a strong argument for for keeping the trees, but we're in a situation where we need to provide better public transport. And what was really interesting is that there was almost a citizen-led study to try collate all of these trees and map them. So I think it's really interesting. I don't know if VU.City was available then. It's only in the last kind of 12, 15 months, but I don't know if VU.City had that capacity at that time. If so, I think it would have saved a lot of citizens a lot of time.
Yeah. So, and also on the flip side, it's really useful for re-greening areas. So you can really quickly identify, which areas need a little bit more greenery and a little bit more green attention. Like Paris, I read that is doing, they're greening the entirety of the Champs-Elysees. So it's pretty cool what they're doing in terms of regrowing trees around cities. A lot of that is happening in London here as well.
Yeah, and look, it's an important one. I actually saw the plans or kind of the visual images for the proposed Champs-Elysees, and that looks amazing. That's somewhere where, I'd love for anybody who's been there, particularly in wintertime where you have the Christmas markets and everything. Actually, the only thing that's wrong with that whole setting is the fact that there are more there are more cars there than they should be. So actually, when I saw the plans, I thought it looked amazing. But again, I think Paris has really stepped up in terms of some of its placemaking and was one of the first to showcase this 15-minute city, which most other contemporary cities are now aspiring to in their new developments. And actually, under the 15-minute cities, I'd imagine a tool like VU.City would be very important there for people to contextually understand what's within their 15 minutes.
You're so on it, Carol. That's actually something that we're working on in the wings. We're looking to work on creating a citizens platform, and that's sort of happening in the background. But we're doing a lot of R&D and research on that at the moment. So watch the space.
Yeah, actually, I think a citizen platform would be a great idea because planning is a public function, and yet people feel quite separated from it. And, certainly it can definitely give the appearance that people only get engaged in the planning process when they're unhappy with something. And a lot of times people will give out for a long time before they'll actually get involved enough to do something, even where they're unhappy. And it would be so much better from a placemaker point of view if we were able to harness all the ideas of people who were living in that space, because they know the blind spots, they know the potential problem areas, but they also know they know the local treasures all times of the year, so there's so much local knowledge there that would really benefit developers and placemakers and even local authorities.
Definitely.
If we were able to harness it.
Yeah, even myself, I find myself like sometimes thinking, I wish we had like a Mexican place really locally. And if you could actually upload that, amazing.
Yeah. No, but this is how placemaking works. I mean, I know VU.City is positioned as a place shaping tool, but language like placemaking and place shaping, it's starting to be very commonly used in the industry, but I'm not sure that people, that all citizens understand what it means. And I also don't know if they're aware how much power they have if they use it to shape places. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that placemaking, that's sort of where my background comes from my last job. And I'm really passionate about placemaking. And this post-COVID recovery, I would say if I could recommend anything to people working in local government would be activate your high streets outdoors, like get people outside, get people wanting to get onto that high street for another reason other than retail. And then the retail will grow organically, like outdoor music and street food and markets and fresh produce, all that stuff. We can activate those areas outside, the people will come.
Do you think in Ireland and the UK, we've allowed for decades the weather to dictate this? So we have the assumption that Irish people love to, and same as people across the UK, we love when we're traveling in warmer climates to sit outside and dine outside all times of the day and night. But we don't make those provisions here because there's almost an assumption that the weather would not be good enough to justify it 12 months of the year.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, in London, it's a bit similar. Bad weather. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's probably tricky to plan, but maybe reinforce those, covered awnings and make sure that, put a little investment into making sure that people are warm and dry.
Yeah, but do you see through VU.City, can you see people making plans like that? Because we're seeing it in Dublin. So I've no doubt that it's happening in other, not just cities, but even larger towns and market towns. People have, it's amazing when we have a problem to solve, we'll solve it. And for coffee shops and restaurants and bars, they got really good at providing outdoor space, all weather outdoor space, with some form of heating. So actually, do you think that that's something that might actually outlive COVID-19? Like, will this be something that maybe will be adopted as a more long-term approach, even in Irish and UK climates?
Yeah, I do think so. I definitely think so. I think people being stuck indoors for a year have started to really want to get outside all the time. Like everybody's become a walker, or I've even become a cycler for the first time in my life. And I love it. Like, why haven't I done this before? Why did I always take the bus when I could get there in 5 minutes? And so, yeah, I definitely think that cities are going to become very different after this. And people are going to want to be outdoors and not crammed inside busy places.
Yeah. And actually, I think a lot of this feeds back into the 15-minute city. It's amazing. The 15-minute city sounds like something that was born out of a solution to the pandemic. And of course it wasn't. All of these plans were well in train years before that, but it's such an ideal solution for where we find ourselves in now. People wanting to really understand their locality, having everything they need within their locality and being able to walk through it without having to take the car out. So, it's interesting in a way that we find ourselves now implementing solutions that are just right for the pandemic. And yet these are ones that actually live up to the very best practices of urban planning and placemaking and contemporary urban living.
Yeah. I think one thing that we've definitely seen, which is pretty surprising, is that we haven't seen any slowdown in development or from our users and the people using the platform and the uptake of the platform and people signing up to use it. It seems like people are designing more now than ever, and they aren't being put on hold. They're working from home, but everybody's still completely able to do their jobs as architects, as planners, as consultants, as developers. We've seen that there hasn't been at all a slowdown in the industry during COVID. If anything, it's been sped up.
That's really interesting, particularly on the design side. Do you have the data kind of separate for Ireland? I mean, can you share with us who or what classes of professionals are using VU.City in Ireland?
Absolutely. So we've got world-renowned architecture practices. We've got, actually, I'm looking after Dublin and Belfast, and across those two cities, we work with Arup, TransLink, oh God, there's so many. I hope I don't miss any out. But Ready Architecture and Urbanism, Digital Dimensions. There's so many different types of people using us. So developers, architects, planners, consultants, visualization studios, and hopefully local authorities soon.
Okay, but actually, in terms of the local authorities, there is such a huge drive towards taking steps to digitize the planning process. And I know that other jurisdictions are in very similar positions. I don't think Ireland is particularly behind the curve on that at all. I think all local governments are struggling to keep up with new tools that are available for planning, and they're all taking steps to implement it. And while there's frustration about the rate of adoption in Ireland, we are seeing some really positive steps in this direction. How a tool like VU.City makes it easier?
It's so easy. It's so easy. Yeah. It's so easy because you open up the model, you drag in another model from another platform, from your developer, your architect, drop it in, click this pin button, brings you right there, open it up, zoom, pan in, go around it, throw some data on it, and you can instantly assess it. It's not at all complicated because we sit on gaming technology, so it's fun. It's sort of like you can get yourself right down into the model, walk around your schemes, look up, look down, turn on like weather tools, and it's so immersive and interactive that actually it doesn't feel like work. Like when I'm demonstrating it, I really don't find it like work. It's fun.
Well, that's always a good thing. But it's interesting that VUCITY was kind of designed to review plans, and that use has really changed, but driven by the industry.
Yeah, and other industries.
Okay.
And other industries. We're seeing so much interest in other companies like shipping companies, insurance, renewable energy. There's solar companies looking to see if they can use VUCITY to layer on data to see what's possible in renewable energy. And so it's not limited to real estate. However, if people want to work on bespoke projects with us from external industries, then we can introduce you to our sort of projects teams who can help you with those bespoke solutions. So that's good to know about.
Oh, very good. And before we finish up today, Charlotte, just because I'm aware that this is a reasonably new role for you and for VUCITY coming into Ireland and Belfast. Yeah. So paint a picture for us. What can architects and planners and indeed placemakers expect from VUCITY over the next year or two?
I would say that we've got a nice city coverage of each city, so Dublin and Belfast. We've got a great amount of data across both of those cities. And I would say that what you can look forward to is us continually improving the product, the platform, loads of more new tools and features coming. And I would say that if you are designing or developing any sort of major schemes across either of those cities, you're definitely going to want to review them in VUCITY. It will save you a lot of time and money.
Very good. And you might just share the website address there. Absolutely.
So it's VUCITY, which is VU.CITY, VU.City.
Super. Thanks a million. That's great. That was Charlotte Duff McCarthy, Business Development Manager at VUCITY. Again, that's VU.City. So that's it from us this week. Thank you for getting in touch with Property Matters on Dublin South FM. As always, you can keep in touch with us at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound this week. We're back at the same time next week. From myself, Carol Talon, and all the team here, stay safe.